welcome to the Search Seizure Show. My name is Anthony Bandiero. I'm an attorney and senior legal instructor for Blue to Gold Law Enforcement Training. This is what I do for a living. And I am joined by my co-host, another legal instructor for Blue to Gold. Mike, why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Mike Boone, and I'm also a legal instructor for the great Blue to Gold company.
And you're a damn good legal instructor too.
I try.
Yeah, you do try. And so you know your stuff. You've been teaching cops for many, many years, search and seizure. You work for a very large agency, but I would also say a prestigious agency that we don't throw your agency name around because that's, we don't want to mix business and pleasure, but
Right.
But you teach a lot of cops search and seizure.
I do.
Okay, so what's up, Sean?
Hey, how are you guys doing?
Hey, Sean, how you
Good,
been?
good, good. You got that volume a little bit? So what you got, man?
So I have an answer, but I thought this was a great question for all the cops out there that you guys are trying to teach. And basically it's about freezing a house for a warrant. And the question came up as to, hey, a detective had called one of the sergeants on shift and said, hey, I want you to go over to this house and I want you to freeze it while I obtain a warrant. And the sergeant was like, oh, are you meaning like go into the house, pull everybody out and just hold, or what do you mean by this? And he was uncomfortable with it because of the search and seizure training we've been doing. So I guess the question that he said is that, I go over there, I knock on the door, and then they open the door, but they don't want to participate. They haven't broke the threshold. Can I pull them out and hold them? Yeah.
So let me ask you some more context questions before we give you an answer. And also, Rick, you see that Anthony is on deck next. Oh, I see. Rick already wrote it actually. So let me ask you this: what did he tell you why he wanted to freeze the home? Why he's getting the warrant?
No, no, he didn't. He didn't express exactly what it was about. Which that was my key question to him. Well, what were the circumstances behind it? Was it a murder suspect?
Yeah,
or was it theft? Was it a theft second? So, what were those aspects? But in general, I didn't like anything to do with body snatching anyone out of a home. So why don't you just sit back and watch it until he gets the actual warrant signed?
Go ahead. What do you have, Mike?
Yeah, I'm with you, Sean. Like, where's the hurry in this? Are the crooks in there? Are they aware you're outside watching? Is anything going to change inside that house in the next 30 minutes, hour, whatever it takes to take that warrant? Depends on your jurisdiction on, some people can turn up telephonic around right now.
Yeah.
These detectives sound like they're working a case, so they probably got what they need for the probable cause. It's just maybe the formality of getting the paper signed, whatever it may be. So my initial thought is kind of along with you. What's the rush? What are we going in there to prevent destruction of evidence right now? Is somebody going to flee out the back? If they don't know we're there, there's probably nothing going to change inside.
Yeah. So let me if you don't mind, what I like to do is take this opportunity to teach our listeners and our watchers, right, a little bit of what we teach. So at Blue to Gold, we teach that there are 3 home freezes, and freezing a home is a colloquial way of saying impoundment. When a cop basically prevents a person from entering a home, or they pull people out and they sweep it for people and like lock it down for a warrant, that is legally known as impoundment of a residence. And impoundment also means that you now are responsible for that resident.
Correct.
So the first freeze is preventing people from entering the home. If you're detective, you said detective, right? You said sergeant, detective, whatever it was. Yeah. So if your detective said, hey, all I want you to do is go to that house, I think it's empty, just keep people out, no problem.
No problem.
You don't even need agency for that. All you have to have is the probable cause that you're going to, and you have to diligently pursue that warrant. That's easy. The next freeze is your cops are already inside the home. That happens
in the home.
That's right. You're in there for a domestic battery,
which is most of the time.
Right. You're in there for a consensual encounter. You're in there for whatever. You're lawfully present, and then you look around. And you're like, oh man, we got to shut this thing down. Let's say it's a domestic battery, and it's a really bad one where we're going to have to do some crime scene stuff. We're going to have to search for weapons that they used against each other or against one spouse, and that is also easy. That case is Illinois versus MacArthur. U.S. Supreme Court. So what they said is kind of like a status quo thing. If you're already in the home lawfully, you are allowed to pull people out to freeze it for a warrant. You also are allowed to do a protective sweep, kind of, because to make sure that there's, for two things: A, you're not leaving anybody in the home, right?
Right.
And B, you also want to make sure that the home is safe, because you are now in charge of the home. It's your you know, the oven is not on, it can catch fire. There's not candles burning near drapes. There's not a baby in a crib. So that's pretty easy. But the third one is what the one I think you're referring to, and that is entry and exclusion. Cops want to go into a home and basically force their way in and start pulling people out. Mike, what do you teach cops when they are trying to do that type of impoundment, a freeze?
Well, again, it's not my favorite. I mean, and just right off the front there, you're making a warrantless entry into a home, which again, that's the castle, right? That's the one of the most protected things under the
not one of the most.
Well,
I think it's
we'll talk about people versus homes.
Yeah.
Homes probably wins.
I mean, you do. I mean, I just making a joke here, but cops do visual cavity searches on people without warrants. They they pat them down and they feel close to intimate areas without warrants. They sweep the backhand during searches to arrest on the breast area. But you put your foot in a door to prevent a person from closing that door on a knock and talk, you violated their rights. 100%. So it's the most protected area. Good, continue.
Yeah, for sure. So when you look at this, you're just going to fall into this. Okay, what's the why? Why right now? Why? What are the courts going to look at this and say, why do you need to break the threshold, enter that protected home?
Right.
And what they're looking for, and like I said, kind of in the first response, the courts are looking for, well, what do we, if we're pushing the issue, that's a problem. If we, like you said, I think something Sean said, go knock on the door and present ourselves that we're here. Sometimes that can be a thought in that.
Yes, look, I think it's a great thing, because with the way, when he said that, I'm like, wait a minute, you do have some courts that like to embrace what's called the police created agency doctrine.
Correct. Yeah,
and it's like, oh, and the guys open up, what do you want, fella? And you're like, hey, we're here because we're gonna go grab a warrant in about an hour or so. So
well, I don't want you in here.
Yeah, we learned that you got drugs in here and everything. So what's your move, partner? You gonna go for that bathroom?
Am I gonna exercise my constitutional right to tell you no?
So so Sean, I don't like it. It really rubs judges the wrong way. Now, we do have a case called Kentucky versus King, where the Supreme Court said that as long as you're not if you're doing things, if you're just doing your regular job, you're knocking on doors, and Kentucky versus King was where the cops knocked on a door and they could smell marijuana before they knocked on the door. And predictably, they did what? They can hear what? Flushing.
Shuffling around, flushing around.
Shuffling, I mean, not the flushing, but they shuffling around, and they knew, like, okay, this shit's going to be gone. And the Supreme Court didn't hammer the cops there, because it's like, okay, you smell the marijuana, you knock on the door. That's a very, police thing to do, to talk to these people. Yeah. It's not the crime of the century. And they start reacting in the sense of destroy evidence.
Destruction of evidence.
Look, you got to do what you got to do.
Correct.
However, we are looking at something that is reasonable. Officers knocking on the door, hey, can I talk about the marijuana coming from your house? But here, especially if the evidence is destructible, drugs and so forth, not a piano, why are you knocking on that guy's door to basically tell him, hey, we're coming back in an hour, forcing this guy to basically make a move to destroy the evidence? Okay, the second thing is Sean, I want to tell you that I got good news and I got bad news. Okay. And Anthony, we got you on deck, and hopefully we got somebody after Anthony. Maybe Zach has a question too. But here I got good news and bad news. You ready for the good news?
Okay.
The good news is that if you did this, if you actually entered the home and locked it down and waited for the warrant, you're not going to lose any evidence. That's Segura versus it might be Segura versus US, but whatever, it's a Segura case from the US Supreme Court. That's really good news. And the reason why the Supreme Court said this is because why are we going to penalize officers when they were going to get the warrant anyway, and now we're going to basically penalize them and lose the evidence because they basically jumped the gun?
As long as they had the probable cause at the time.
The probable cause at the time, and they were going to get the warrant.
Right.
So a case called Murray, the Supreme Court said, if you are entering a home without a warrant, you shouldn't have done it. And you now you see something as like, okay, now that's why I'm gonna get a warrant. No go.
No go. Yeah.
The illegal intrusion cannot be the impetus,
the basis of the warrant, probable cause.
That's right. Or the probable cause. Right. But here, even if you had probable cause, according to Murray, right? Even if you had the probable cause, but you entered and you're like, oh shit, I'll probably get a warrant now. You can't do that because the illegal entry is the impetus, is the reason why you're getting the warrant. Does that make sense? So in your case, Sean, your officer told you, hey, I'm going to get a warrant. Go lock it down, right?
Right.
No, you're not going to lose any evidence. Now you ready for the bad news?
Yes.
The bad news is it's a civil rights violation. The U.S. Supreme Court said in a criminal court, we're not going to lose the evidence, but the officers can still be sued.
Yeah, so they could be up on a 1983 case.
Correct. And I know of an officer in Kansas. I know of an officer in Kansas that essentially did what we're talking about right now. He went into a home without exigency, without the warrant, and was looking to lock it down. He ended up killing the owner because the owner fought back and resisted the government intrusion, and that officer stood trial for murder.
Wow.
Because the prosecutor said, and I quote, the reason why we are, I'm sorry, I am paraphrasing, but basically what the prosecutor said, we are here today charging this officer because he violated the Fourth Amendment and went into the home without a recognized exception.
Yeah, and I think this is one of those areas that cops get confused on a lot.
Yes.
You need to understand that, the courts are all leaning to the Sukasa is untouchable.
It is. And why are we doing it? I mean, in other words, if the detective came to you and says, hey, LT, we have reason to believe that they're onto us. They're going to destroy this evidence. We can't get the warrant into time. Can you please help lock it down? That's totally different. Hey, tell me why.
Yeah, I want to comment what Zach was saying here. So maybe a UC got burned.
That's right.
And there's something happening right now. Or let's say, when I worked narcs, we'd take off crooks. Like we'd be watching the house, someone would leave.
Yes.
And maybe by the time we're walking up the car, they're on the phone with the house.
Right.
They'll say, hey, they're watching the house. They stopped me down the street. Now there's stuff happening right now. Now there's a justification where, especially a narcotics investigation, is readily destroyable.
Yeah, that's totally different.
That's part of it.
That's totally different.
Yeah,
that's totally
sure.
different.
Absolutely.
And go ahead, Sean.
No, I agree, Mike, 100%. You change the facts on that aspect. You've got the agency now.
Yeah. Rick, once you get Anthony on deck, Anthony, just keep your mic muted. We're going to get you on deck. We'll get you warmed up here. But the one last thing I want to share with you, Sean, is that I see most of these violations occur with narcs, and because you reminded me of it, and what'll happen here, a lot of East Coast. I'm just telling you what my experience has been. A lot of East Coast narc units will do like, oh yeah, we just had our UC, CI, whatever, buy some drugs. You go get the warrant, and they'll say, me, you, we're gonna go to that house. They'll knock on the door, in plain clothes. The guy will answer, the drug dealer, and they'll enter and basically lock it down. So they're gonna get the warrant. And then when you ask them, hey, why are you doing this? Like, what is the agency here? We don't have agency, but they could destroy the evidence.
Could, right.
That's a very bad practice. Again, you don't lose your evidence, but you may lose your freedom.
Hey, on a closing real quick on that, the sergeant asked me, he goes, hey, just what if the judge denies the warrant and you forced your way in that house and you've detained those people for the last.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Even worse. Now, yeah. Now you look, it's just not good practice. And, I don't know if it's the lust for the bust, but I'm not going to look, unless you have agency, I'm not doing things just because I may lose the evidence. I don't give a shit, okay, about that. My freedom and my agency is not worth dope, even if it gets flushed down the toilet because somehow they learned about us and I didn't know about it. It is what it is. We'll give them the next time. I'm not losing my life, losing my, and maybe taking their life because they're going to resist the affront when we have no piece of paper that says we're not even allowed to be here.
And one more thing too, Sean, I always gave my, when I worked dope for a long time, I always gave my new detectives a piece of advice: build your case outside the home. Build a solid case outside the home, especially narcotics and other investigations. You might need that though. Build a good case outside the home.
I love it.
Yeah.
What a great scenario, Sean. I think we fully answered it. You agree? Are we good?
Absolutely agree. Thank you both.
Thank you for coming on deck.